Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Hi.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Billy. Hi, Billy.
We'll get going in a few minutes. We'll just let some more people trickle into our discussion. But nice to see all of you.
Hi, Kevin.
Good morning, Frank. Hello, everybody.
Oh,
Nice to see
Kevin.
you, Kevin.
everyone can see a screen. Beautiful landscape. Okay.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Dave. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. We'll get going shortly. How are we doing for numbers, Emily?
We're at 27, so I think we should give it maybe an extra minute. See
Sure.
people consistently trickle in, but
Okay.
we'll let you know.
Thank you. How is it in Portland today? Dreary, sunny, bit of both.
Looks like both. I think
Yeah, I was
that's-
gonna
we're in that zone right now where we're
Yeah.
sun and rain and
Yes, I feel you. I think I'm having a misty day here in Ontario, Canada. I don't know if you, Rebecca, we're right around the corner from each other. So
We're in Ontario.
I'm in a small town called Stratford. If you're a theater goer, you may have heard
Been
of
there,
Stratford.
Stratford-on-Avon.
Yes. Some people know it as Justin Bieber's hometown, which I'm not really promoting, but it has increased our reputation.
It's not his original hometown. Didn't he go visit and ended up buying something there?
No, he was born and raised here.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah, he was busking on the street corner when I was in my 20s, I guess. So yeah, he's made a good name for himself.
All right, Shannon, I think we can get started.
Sounds good. All right, good morning, everyone. I'm sure we'll have more people join us. So thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to participate in our regional co-creation lab. We'll do some introductions shortly, but I'm going to pass it over to our lead strategic consultant, Frank Kuipers, and we'll get this day started.
sorry, I'm under the attack of a bird here. Okay. Hi, everybody. Very welcome. Thank you for joining us. We would have loved to be there in a physical space with you. That's what we normally do. But as you know, that was not possible. So we're going to do our best to make it as intimate and as entertaining as possible. Who are we? We are Destination Think. We are, like the name says, a company that loves to think about places. We work with cities, we work with DMOs, but most of the time we have a laser focus on tourism. And that's what we do a lot in the United States, in Canada, but actually all over the globe, which probably explains my accent. What you see here on the slide is that we bring places closer to people, and that is, in a nutshell, our philosophy. We are very serious about the fact that people own the name of a place, right? You can't do anything without engaging or involving the residents of a place. Okay, next slide, please. So before I hand over to Shannon, let me introduce my team. And before I do that, the reason you are here is probably very important. So we work together with Travel Oregon since February, and in a few minutes I will explain what we have been doing. But the final deliverable is a transformational strategy, an overarching strategy. Some of you might have seen the video that we have sent already. That would be awesome. But if not, no worries, we will do a short recap. So we're gonna deliver that at the end of the year. And that should be really a strategy that makes Oregon as a state, speaking about tourism, future-proof. My name is Frank Kuipers. I'm senior strategist at Destination Think. I do teach also a bit in the United States, in Europe. And I'll pass it over to William.
Thanks, Frank. Good morning, everyone. My name is William Bakker, and I am the Chief Strategist at Destination Think. I am speaking to you from the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically the Musqueam peoples, in a city that's also known as Vancouver, British Columbia. I also have an accent. I'm near Frank. I'm originally from the Netherlands. Really looking forward to speaking to all of you today. And now I'm handing it over to Rebecca.
Thanks, William. My name is Rebecca Godfrey. I'm also a senior strategist with Destination Think, and living close to Shannon. I'm in Toronto, or Toronto as we call it. And I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And it's now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I'm very happy to be here with you today and to learn more about the Portland region. Okay.
Hi.
Go ahead, Amy.
Thanks, Rebecca. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy, and I'm joining you today from the traditional territories of the Squamish and Lillooet Nations in Whistler, BC. And I'm really looking forward to speaking to you today. Some of us will go into a breakout room together, so we'll get a chance to talk in depth. And I'll hand it over to Emily.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Neville. I'm a project manager here at Destination Think. I am based in Denver, Colorado, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional territories of the Ute, Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Sioux Nations. So excited to be here with you guys today and looking forward to our session. I'll send it over to Shannon.
Thanks, everyone. And yes, I'm Shannon Landreth, client strategist at Destination Think. Been working really closely with the team since February and yourselves in Travel Oregon. So my role is really to lead you all through this project as well as our team to get to our ultimate goal of the transformational strategy. I wish to acknowledge this land which I'm speaking you from on the traditional territories of Anishinaabe, Waukee, Adirondack, and the Mississauga territories. So that is our team. So you'll get to know us quite well over the next couple hours or so. And with that in mind, here's a quick recap of our agenda. So before we jump into sort of the meat of our discussion today, just wanted to go over a few housekeeping rules just to help everybody with our virtual environment. As Frank and the team said, we really wish we could have been there with you in 3D. Hopefully one day soon we can. So I'll talk you through a few things before we get started. And then we're going to do a bit of a recap of where are we? We've been in this amazing journey with Travel Oregon since February and want to share a little bit about how we've gotten to today, what we've learned, and really the ultimate goal as we move ahead. Then we'll move into our first breakout and get to know each of you a little bit more intimately to sort of start off the day. Come back and do some sharing about what we learned in our breakouts. And then kind of go into the vision for Travel Oregon and the state with regards to tourism for the future. We'll have a quick break and then back half of our day, we'll be talking a little bit about the visitor, who we want to attract, who we don't want to attract, etc. And then ultimately, how do we make that vision come to life? What do we need to do to make all of that come true? And that's really where we want as much input from yourselves to put this into tangible outcomes. Before we head off for the day, we'll do a little quick recap on what's next so you understand the next part of our journey and how we'll get to the end game. So I see some of you have your cameras on. Nice to see your faces. If you do feel comfortable, feel free to turn your camera on, especially when we're in the breakout session, so we can get to know you a little bit more intimately and engaging. We do have the chat feature on Zoom as well, so feel free to utilize that for any comments, questions, or if you just have any thoughts that you want to put in there. We'll do our best to address everything in the chat, but we are transcribing this call today as well. So all of the notes that will be put in the chat we'll also be looking at after our call. When you're not speaking, we just ask you put yourself on mute just to mitigate any background noise and allow everyone to speak up when they can. And if you'd like to use the raise your hand feature, just so we can properly make sure everyone has a chance to share their thoughts. If you haven't done so already, if you hover over your face, there's three little buttons that say you can update your name, so we can make sure that we have a name to the face. We'll have a quick break just to make sure you can check any emails, get a breath of fresh air, regroup a little bit before we come back into further exercises. And lastly, with the breakout rooms, we will have those for the exercises. Should you finish your discussion a bit earlier than our time allows, feel free to head back to the main room until we move on to the next exercise. Just a heads up, we are recording it, and purely because we will be listening back to all of the wonderful discussion we'll have today to really help validate and direct the transformational strategy. And as Emily said, she is our tech support today. So if you have any issues, if you get lost in the Zoom world, we'll make sure you'll get back into your group. With that in mind, I'm going to turn it back to Frank.
And here we are again. Hi, everybody again. My family is a bit worried because I said I had to talk to Portland. And there's a very notorious story in my family. Last time we were in your city, they lost me for a full day in Powell's bookstore. So where are we? Where are we in the process of creating that strategy? Next slide, please. And before I do that, the real challenge for you is actually this slide. This slide refers to a Japanese guy, a Japanese professor, was very famous in the 90s, and he wrote a lot of books. He's a philosopher about change and changing. And one of the things he said is that with all the craft you have, it still is very difficult to build a boat. But if your ship is on the ocean and then you need to rebuild it, that is even more difficult. And this is a global thing, right? We had COVID-19 everywhere, but there are also environmental changes, there are societal changes, and I don't need to explain to you what they are all about. So that is what is happening. So on the one hand, we need to keep running our tourism businesses and our DMOs, and on the other hand, we need to change. We need to, that's why we call that transformation. The image is rebuilding rather than starting from scratch and so on. There are things you absolutely need to make future-proof. In the meantime, you should also have some consistency in what you are doing. That is a real challenge. Next one, please. So speaking now, I think 60% of the work has been done. These are 2 very busy weeks for my team because we are running basically 10 workshops, different kinds of workshops, but 7 of these workshops are with the regional DMOs, right? In the 7 regions with people from the industry hosted by the regional DMOs. You're the third. excuse me, you're the third, and next week the other 4. In the meantime, we also will have workshops with groups of special interest. We had already a focus group with tribes. We will run sessions with the BIPOC community, Hispanic community. We had also a session already with the leadership of the regional DMOs, but the workshops for the regions are all the same. Not that it is entirely science, but we want to compare because we know there are huge difference in point of view, whether you live on the coast, in a big city, or in a very rural area. What we have been doing by now since February was basically the right part of this strategic wheel, envisioning the future. What do you see as possibilities for the future? And now we're going to flip this and you see how do we get there and where do we want to go. Now we want to talk about more tangible stuff. What do we need to do? How are we gonna achieve that? How are we gonna make that change happening? So by the end of next week, we will probably have done 80% of the work, and then we can start drafting a framework for the strategy. There will be some going back and forth, some extra consultations here and there. And then also for the Travel Oregon team, there will be a second deliverable. We're going to give them recommendations how to execute that strategy. What kind of organization do you need? How do you need to work together to make all that happen? So we did a lot. We want to be thorough. We interviewed every Travel Oregon team member. We had 12 actually already consultations with thought leaders or industry leaders. Some of you are in the workshop, I see. We had interviews with agencies and other consultants working with Travel Oregons. We had sessions after governance conference where I did a keynote. Some of you probably have attended, 60, 70 people. We had a survey up and running, and we wrote a research report for the Travel Oregon team to say, hey, this is what we heard and this is what we think. And I give you a very brief wrap up in the next 5 minutes. And I said already the work are all in the pipeline these 2 weeks. Next slide, please. So some findings and observations, and overall, what we heard from the industry, from the interviews and during GovConf, my overall impression, and for me, it was really remarkable how many conversations during these sessions became immediately and spontaneously community-related discussions, right? This is really strong and probably even stronger in the Portland area. So we think there are 3 really clusters of things that should be focused on socially, economically, and environmentally. Now, socially, what we see is that, and that's good news, people that work in tourism, they're not defensive, but they defend tourism because they say, actually, this should be a good force. The tourism adds dynamics to a place, right? That's something you hear also, for instance, when we talked with the tribes. Sometimes a view from an outsider can even change the view on you, on other people in your state or your community. So there is a sort of good force in that tourism, but we need to tell this more to people. That's the last phrase, and that is very important because there is a disconnection between residents not understanding value of tourism that goes further, still according all the things we heard, that goes further than only financial. And we need to be relevant to the people we represent, and this goes both ways. The people we represent is, of course, the people we work for, the people in the tourism industry, but also equally so, the people of our communities, the people that live with us, also the LGBT community, the tribal people, and the BIPOC people. Economically, there is probably less discussion. Everybody wants growth, now gravitating towards qualitative growth, but it's also important that on a state level, everybody tells a unified tale, right? Because if you're gonna have different messages about what tourism value really is, then you weaken your value proposition to your own residents. And environmentally, you have the ability to be stewards of the land and to do it responsibly. So that's a part you really can control. You can control how you market, to whom you market, and how you promote. And make sure that you're working with your local communities also to protect them. And on the next slide, we wrote that research report. And one of the things that really stood out is the definition of what destination management means. This is not about semantics. This is about something much deeper. As long as many people think differently about what it means, it's not going to work. A lot of people define destination management uniquely about fixing problems caused by tourism. And that's only half of the story. Of course, cleaning up the litter, cleanup days, signage, all these things really do matter. Dispersal, seasonally, geographically, traffic problems, solving them, all that is something that destination management has to look into. But it's also being serious about co-creation from in the start and having that dialogue with your residents. Residents at the core of everything. If you cut out your residents, that will pose business risks in the future. And believe me, William and I, we have done many keynotes with a lot of problems in destinations where there is a disconnect and it will block you. So like we said, communicate the true value of tourism to residents, adopt a win-win-win approach to a strategy, which means do not send the invoice to a third party, could be Mother Nature, could be local people, visitor pressure, and so on. Create long-term strategies, and I think people are quite aligned. We really need that long-time vision and overarching strategy. And from there on, we can do the planning and update that on a yearly or 2-yearly basis. You will need to change your marketing as well. Now, this should not be a threat for people that work in marketing, but it's doing things differently, right? So if you look into the best destination managers on the planet, the New Zealanders, the Icelanders, and so on, they're fantastic communicators. But to who do you communicate and how do you communicate? That could be looked into and could be changed. And one of the CEOs of a regional DMO said to me, Travel Oregon built a fantastic communication machine. So now they can unleash that power to use it also to work upon our communities, our residents, and our own people. And last but not least, destination development is at the heart of destination management, because this is an old wisdom, walk your talk. You can't promote stuff that will come back in your face as a boomerang when it's not well developed, right? That will drive bad word of mouth. Next one. Build Oregon's brand upon its identity. You have a fantastic brand. So when I visited Portland years ago, honestly, it was not my choice. My kids obliged me to go to Portland, and there was a reason. For young urban kids in Europe, 10 years ago, Portland was one of the cool places in the United States they absolutely wanted to see. I had to speak in San Diego, and I ended in Portland with my family. But what you see is also, and I only can testify that, people in Europe know where Oregon is nowadays. You build a fantastic brand. What we say here is keep that brand, but it should come alive also in your residents. It should be lived, not only be known. And that is very important. Talking with your residents about your identity, this is your license to operate. Empower stakeholders and build social license. This is becoming an enabler, right? A lot of DMOs, and this really comes from good intentions, they want to do everything themselves. And that's something you need to change as well, because you can't. So this is really deep, deep, deep stakeholder management. Place climate action at the core of destination management. This is often the most loaded finding here, but speaking with all these people, wildfires, it's not gonna go away immediately, right? Climate change is not going to go away immediately. So you need to relate as a tourism organization to that. You need to lead by example. So if you have a company, if you have a DMO, you really need to say, what are we going to do as a company? DEI is so important, should not be left on the level of tactics and actions, but it should rise above the emotional to a strategic level. And last but not least, you need to measure these things in destination management, new things, right? Okay, that is in a very, very brief wrap up a document of 60, 70 pages. What we're going to do now is going into breakout sessions. You will find a facilitator. Two of them are native English speakers and 2 of them are not. I'm not sure who these people are. And what we're going to do actually is get to know you better. We do introductions and we have some questions there for you. We're going to show them and these questions should make you talk. We're really, really after what are you passionate about? What could be changed? And another question about tourism, of course. Okay, thank you. Emily, you can send us to the breakout rooms. Right. Let's see who is there. Razia, do I pronounce that correctly?
Morning, it's Razier.
Razier. Okay, thank you. Hi, Kevin. Billy, I met you already, right? Okay, great to see you again. I see Sarah Gilbert.
Gilbert, yep.
Elizabeth Nye. I see Chanda Hall.
Hi.
And is it Silke?
Yay! Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's a name that we know over here. It's also
Yep.
Dutch. Yeah. Okay.
I was born in Germany, so the German name.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're close to German. Okay, let's do a quick round of the table. Just tell me who you are, where do you live, what organization do you represent, and what do you expect of this workshop? Razier, let's start with you.
Yeah, so good morning. I'm Razier Rashan. I'm the executive director for Tualatin Valley Creates, and we're the leading art service organization for Washington County, Oregon. We actually work, Silke sits as an ex officio on our board, and she's with Washington County Visitors Association. So we're invested in making sure that the arts are a destination asset and recognizing that people travel for cultural arts, stay longer, spend more money, and how we can work with many of our business partners to highlight that.
Okay, great to hear. What are your expectations of this? Why did you begin?
Yeah, I'd love to learn some more tools, some more language, messaging. You talked about breaking down some traditional marketing and anything I can bring to my staff and team about how we can better brand the arts here in this area and how we can continue to advocate to our elected leaders about opening up some funding for the arts so that we can do more public art installation.
Yeah, great. I hope these ideas come from your colleagues, right? Because we're going to facilitate. Kevin, you're next on my list. Who are you?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Wright. I work for Travel Oregon in marketing. Live in Portland, and my expectation is, I guess, I'm curious. We've been working a lot with Destination Think on a statewide level, so it'll be interesting to have a similar conversation at a local or regional level, and I'm curious to see how that plays out in the space of just changing my mindset from Oregon to the Portland region. So just curious.
Where do you live, Kevin?
In Portland.
Okay, yeah, that helps. Hi, Billy. Can you quickly introduce yourself to the team here?
Hi, everybody. I see so many familiar faces. How nice. I'm Billy Moser, and I'm the VP of International Affairs. And so I know a few of you when we were in the National Tourism Department, and also oversee now community engagement for Travel Portland. Travel Portland is the DMO for Portland, and then we are also the RDMO for the Portland region. My hope and expectation for today is to learn more to learn more understanding of the region and the state as a whole. And also just the word transformational change, you know, that just is super interesting. So I'm looking forward to, to participating and hearing from everyone.
Thank you, Billy. Are you aware that your family name, Moser, is also the name of the most famous Italian road cycler, Francesco Moser?
No, but I am Austrian.
Yeah.
And so what I always say is the name Moser is like, you know, Miller.
Yeah.
Here, we're over there, over there, there's thousands of Mosers.
Yeah.
Where here, there's very few. But in Austria, Hans Moser was the most famous actor of maybe my grandparents' generation. So that's what I used to get as a kid if I was related to him. But
totally makes sense, because Francesco Moser was from the you have Ticino, and then it's Italian Tyrol, so they speak German there. Okay, Silke.
Hi, everyone. I'm Silke Neal-Finnegan. I am the Vice President of Marketing for the Washington County Visitors Association, and we market our area as Tualatin Valley. And similar to what Billy said, I'm interested in learning more about how other people see the Portland region and how we can better tell our story, and to whom to tell the story, because our destination is a lot different than Portland's destination, but we are part of the Portland region, and looking forward to getting some ideas and getting to know more about everyone, and hearing everyone's inputs and experiences.
Thank you. Great. We'll do our best. Elizabeth, you're next on my list.
Hey everyone, my name is Elizabeth Nye. I'm the Executive Director at Lansu Chinese Garden. I've been in my role for exactly a year. Joined Lansu in October last year, and I am new, not to nonprofit management, but new to this sector. And so I'm definitely here as part of my learning journey. I'm also in the process right now of engaging the Lansu Board of Directors and larger community in a strategic planning process. So I'm looking, for opportunities to learn and grow and incorporate those learnings into our strategic priorities for the next few years moving forward.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Chanda.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shanda Hall. I'm the manager of the Sherwood Center for the Arts, which is in the town of Sherwood, Oregon, just south of Portland in Washington County. So we work with Razier often. I'm here to learn more about what we can do. Again, as someone mentioned, messaging, how to tell our story, how to share what is unique to our town, and boost tourism, especially in our historic downtown area where the Arts Center is located.
Thank you. Great, Chanda. Sarah, you're next on my list.
Hi there, I'm Sarah from Around Portland Tours, one of the probably broadest tour companies in terms of the sorts of tours we do. We do walking, biking, and vehicle-based tours. So we are usually the front lines for people, and given that we operated pretty much all through the pandemic, we've been the one in many cases that's defining the city for people. And so we're seeing everybody's firsthand impressions of what their marketing was, which is often, not a lot. A lot of people come here based on this kind of just loose idea of what Oregon might be, what Portland might be. And of course that's super changed in the last couple of years. And that's something we address directly on our walking tours. So I'd love to from this experience, get the opportunity to share some of, what we hear from customers on the first line, these tourists, and what, I think what we could change about some of the way we present the city and the state to reflect, I think, like the truth of what it is, rather than like creating a brand that just reflects what we want the city to be, but reflect what the city really is and what people do love about it, and like what they can get from it. I'm having those conversations every day, so it's nice, an opportunity to share those with some of my colleagues today.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. When I started at university 10 years ago with research for residents in the tourism space, there was not much appetite, and now it's everybody wants to do it, right? We can't keep pace with the demand. So yeah, that's great to see. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people are also forced to do it because they feel the pressure. Okay, we're gonna ask you. The first one can be very quick. The first is a question about passion, right? And the question is, if there's one thing I really love about Portland, what would you say, Rosaya?
Well, I echo your passion for Powell's books, and I do have to say that we have a Powell's books in Beaverton, which is Washington County. I think the thing that I love about Portland as a city is the vibrancy of just walking around. Once you can get here, if you fly in, you can take the public transit, get to downtown Portland. You can walk the entire city in a day. So one thing I do love about the Portland core is that it's small for a metro city. It's small. And so it's kind of a condensed arts, political, Northwest Portland versus Southwest Portland, and then we have the east side as well. So I think I love the size of Portland.
Yeah, no, that's great. It has a very urban feel, and at the same time, it's still on a human scale. Okay, who wants to go next? And also, if you're shy to speak up, you can use a chat box, right? You can also dump there some impressions. Billy.
Yeah, I agree with everything that was said already, but I'd say if I have one word, then it'd be the outdoors forest park. So I think that there's so much green space in this, human-sized large city.
Okay, great. Who wants to go next? What are you passionate about? Yeah, Elizabeth.
So I grew up here, and I remember Northwest 23rd just loving the fact that there were so many shops and boutiques that were locally owned with locally produced products and shops and goods. And the fact that has, I think, that idea, that concept is populated throughout the city. I don't know very many other cities where it's like, I feel like you could truly shop local here.
Yeah, I was blown away by the street food. Never saw that in my life, a city that had so much street food to offer. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Who wants to go next? Silke?
I'm trying to find my mic. I've been told I have a hot mic, so I apologize if it's really too loud. The proximity to farms, I think, is one of the things I love the most. The fact that on any given day, I can drive less than half an hour and I'm picking my own fruit or buying fresh fruit from a farm stand. And I just love that proximity to farmland.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm not gonna have everybody for this one. We're going to the next one, and I pick some other names. So, but please, if you want to respond to this one, use the chat box, because that is everything you say in the chat box is noted as well, and it's only for our own use. If there's one thing I would change about Portland, right? Now you said what you love about Portland. What would you change if you had the powers to do that? Let's start with Chanda. What would you change?
Hi, so I just put something in the chat about the green space and how I love it. And I put in the art scene. I would change, though, coming from the live performance space. A lot of creative people move here, and we have the potential for a really vibrant, percolating art scene, but it's just becoming so unlivable. And the pandemic didn't help, but I know personally dozens of artists who have moved out of Portland in the last 3 years. And every artist that leaves just makes our art scene less vibrant. So the livability for creative folks, because I would argue that creativity is also what makes the city vibrant.
Oh, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Kevin, put off your cap of Travel Oregon and speak as a citizen.
I think as a citizen, you got to talk about houselessness, and that's an issue for our city right now.
Yeah, is it really so bad?
I think it's worse than it has been. I think the pandemic hasn't helped, and a lot of things are kind of not helping. My understanding, and I haven't been out a ton, but when I talk to colleagues in other cities, Denver, San Francisco, I don't think we're unique in that place. I think that's across the country, but it has made I don't know, as a resident, livability a little tougher.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to join in on this particular topic. I think that I agree that we are struggling a lot with taking care of our people. And what I'd love to see from the city changed in the city is worrying more about how we are caring for the people rather than our reputation for it. And that's something where I've seen that big, deficit, I think, in city leadership, is worrying more about like what people know than about what's happening. And I would like to take better care of these people living on the streets, and maybe find a way for them not to be.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Let's see. Someone I have not heard yet. I've heard everybody. So for this question, no, I had Elizabeth already, right? For the change question.
No, I mean, so I've been pretty vocal lately about the issues of public safety and the mental behavioral health issues that we're experiencing in downtown and Old Town. I think if I were to take it upstream, the thing that I would change about Portland is our form of government. We have, in my opinion, a profound crisis in leadership, and systemically, it's not helped by our city commission form of government.
Oh, I think Frank is frozen, so we'll give him a go.
I thought he was deep in thought.
I know, the poor guy, his internet just, he'll be right back.
Right,
Oh, there he
yeah,
is.
no, I'm so.
Oh, nope. Thank you guys for bearing with this, the fun times of virtual. There you are, Frank. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, they do that automatically. So if you're kicked out, they mute you as well. Sorry for that. Can happen again. That's the fun of virtual workshops. Happened already 2 times in the one we did with the team as well. Okay, we still have 5 minutes, and I really want to go to this question. The high value visitor, whatever that may mean, is the one who spends the most money. Curious what you think about this one. Let's start with Chanda. And just, there are no bad answers, just your spontaneous thoughts about it.
I mean, I guess I've never thought of it that way, but I come from the nonprofit world. I think high value to me means spending it locally. So locally owned shops, local arts organizations, someone buying a ticket at at the museum and then going to a locally owned restaurant. Sure.
Okay. Yeah, and you'll hear the expression high yield often as well. But should it be only financially? Curious what you think, Billy?
Well, you know what I think.
I know we asked this question, so I want to hear that again.
Yeah, I come I've worked in the arts, by the way, as well for 9 years, an arts administrator. But my tourism career was primarily in international, and I do not believe that the high value visitor is the one who spends the most money. And it has to do with what you already said. It is about locally spending. So in the last, let's call it 10 years or something, you know, Chinese visitors standing in line of at the Apple store, the Gucci store, or these, you know, at outlet malls, you know, in Wilsonville, and buying 50 purses, that's not a high value visitor. So spending locally, and yes, we want a visitor who spends well, you know, we want our ADRs and our average daily rates to be healthy. We definitely want them to spend money on restaurants. We want them to go to our attractions, which were famous for our gardens, like the Lanzhou, obviously. So we want them to spend broadly. And in my mind, it's like lodging, you know, a third, retail a third, and, you know, I mean, you know, retail meaning experiences as well, attractions, all of that, and culinary a third. So that's how I just always thought about it. Doesn't mean that I'm a third, but it doesn't have to be the person that spends the most. Like the Chinese, as an example, they spend very highly, but they don't spend any time, you know, funds on any money on our local, our, you know, restaurants, let's say, or our lodging. So that is generalizing, and it's changing as well. But that's how I think about it and have thought about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Razia.
Yeah, I was just typing in the chat. I think also to be viral marketing agents. So come, enjoy, soak up what's so special about the Portland, Metro Washington County area. Go home and tell the story of how you got lost in Palos for a day, or, you know, hey, we made it to a farm, or we did the ale trail, or some other thing that is just completely unforgettable. And so they tell their neighbors, they tell their family members, and then they come back. So, you know, maybe we become, I think a high value visitor is somebody who comes back regularly. And, you know, and I think as we talk about really representing and being partners with our actual residents, maybe that high value visitor comes back and lives here. Maybe they retire here, and then they open a business, or they bring their own craft and their experiences and their skills. They become patrons to the theater. So I'm thinking like long term, the outside ripple as a value.
Yeah, thank you. And Sarah echoes that as well. We have time for one last. Who wants? Any volunteers? Yeah, I'm gonna just pick Chanda again. We have 50 seconds, Chanda.
Oh, the pressure. Well, I want to say yes to what Razier said as well, because the, you know, viral marketing is such a big, huge draw. And I don't think it was as much a part of the conversation 15, 20 years ago. But yeah, it really does matter that people visit our area and then share that with people and entice other people to come just by word of mouth. Or I guess nowadays word of mouth is Instagram, or what, like, I don't know what you would call it, but I would yes and what Razier said.
Okay, thank you. Still time to send us something in the chat, and in 10 seconds we go back to the main room, and then we're gonna listen to what the others have said. And then there's a next exercise. We keep the pressure on you, but there will be a break, I promise.
Instead of getting someone cut off mid-sentence, I just said 20 seconds before the end, why don't we all go to the main room? Feels way more polite.
Right?
Yeah.
It's very Canadian of you, William.
Only took me 100 workshops to figure that one out.
All right, I think we got everyone back. Looking for Frank. There he is. Okay. So we're going to do a very quick share back. Our Think facilitators will sort of skim over some of the key highlights of your discussion. and then we'll move on. So William, since you're back first in the room, you can go first.
Sounds good. Lots to love about Portland. It's the part I didn't make notes because I didn't realize we need to do share back as well. But also the region, right? The sort of the culture, but also around Portland, the location, so the nature and the environment, but also things that are very Portland, like the makers, and of course some of the sports teams. What can we improve about Portland? Lots of conversations about the social issues, also highlighting the diversity in our marketing was mentioned, and also not forgetting about the region around Portland as well in our marketing communication. And then the high value visitor was, nobody agrees that it was the one that spends the most money. But what I really liked was that the high value visitor leaves saying good things about Portland. And a high value visitor brings a bit of Portland home with them, and maybe have a lasting relationship with Portland through that, and maybe comes back more times. And a high value visitor also has a positive impact, leaves the place better than when they came, by acting and living more like a local, and taking time to understand and appreciate the place and the people, and also the connection to stewardship. And the one thing I wanted to mention about the previous question as well, there was a conversation about this mantra of keep Portland weird, which doesn't always feel like everybody is part of that, because not everybody considers themselves weird and jumps on a bike naked. But maybe instead of keep Portland weird, keep Portland a place where everyone can be themselves. And that's for us.
Great. I love that sentiment. Thanks, William and team. Amy, what about your group?
Thanks, Shannon. So a lot of the same things as William's group. For what people loved about Portland, the diversity really came across, and this was shown in so many ways, from the historic vibrancy and all the things you can do, the green spaces and access to everything, easy access. And this even went so far as the proximity to the outdoors, so the regions around them and how they see that as such a big benefit. And the user friendliness, again, to get around. The atmosphere also came up, that this is an energetic city, a lively city with so much to do, just this fun energy, and the kind and friendly community and how welcoming they are to all. One thing I would change about Portland, again, social issues really dominated this situation so far, that we talked about how they need to be addressed to keep the pride of the place. So everyone who lives there is very proud of where they're from, but there's going to be a tipping point where if these social issues get too big, that's going to take away from that. And another challenge that came up was the amount of process that goes into decision making. And that just to get everyone to agree to get consensus on everything, that can challenge some more bold, out of the box, visionary type of progressive moves. And finally, with the high value visitor as one who spends the most money, everybody disagreed, pointing out that if someone comes and it's at the expense of disrespecting the land, the people, or even the vibe, then no, it doesn't make sense. Also really pointing to this high value visitor, well, where is their money going, and making sure it really is going back to funding and supporting the community. Conversations about how everyone is welcome and everyone is high value, talking about children who come who really don't spend money, but just making them fans of this place, they may come back. So all of that came out, and really balancing out the visitor was what we landed on to meet the needs and of all, from the 4- and 5-star hotels to the smaller opportunities and regions. Thanks.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, I love that. Future ambassadors of Portland. That's a really good point to make. Rebecca, what about your group?
All right, thank you. I had our group actually start with what we would change. So first off was safe bike trail access, bikehead access. But there was a lot of discussion on awareness of the individual communities within Oregon. So whether it's the geographic community or from a more demographic or social perspective, and better connectedness between them. We also talked about better cleanliness. It's really sad, the fact that it's very sad to see all the trash and the homelessness crisis. So there's a concern that the welcoming atmosphere is diminishing, and that may have an impact on tourism in the longer term. We also talked about wanting to welcome more diverse groups, be that LGBT, be that BIPOC communities. We'd like to welcome them. So what can we do to do that better? And just about taking the opportunity to reframe the narrative that there's an opportunity to be at the end of the Oregon Trail, and changing that term, we are the conquerors, to we are the stewards, we are the healers. So doing more of a 21st century reframing of that. And then on what we love, food, wine is unparalleled. We talked about fish, crabs, marionberries. I hope I got that right. And that we are the rock stars of our zip codes. I thought that was a great line. And that's talking about our communities, that the Oregonians, and particularly in this region, are very collaborative. And we love the landscape and the manageability of traffic, particularly compared to those of us that live in big urban centers like Toronto and Chicago. And then the high value visitor, everyone agreed that term needs to change. Actually, that came from someone who isn't from the tourism industry, who said, well, is there a low value visitor? And so we talked about how traditionally the high value visitor has gone hand in hand with bringing more money to the destination. But to the people in my group, the high value visitor is a champion of the destination, who respects the destination, who comes frequently, who comes and supports it, positive experiences, and then as an ambassador, tells their friends and family, and that people just need to feel safe. So it's not just the visitors, it's the residents are also high value.
Awesome. Really good discussion. Love those insights. Thanks, Rebecca and team. Frank, you're last.
Love about Portland. Someone mentioned Powell Bookshop. Is that not great?
Okay.
Meet a kindred spirits in another place. Vibrancy of just walking around. You can walk the entire city in one day. So it's a very condensed experience. It's an arts and political mecca. The size of Portland, still small town feel. It's accessible, the outdoors, so much green space. So you can, in half an hour, be in a farm even. So, and it's a very sharp division, very urban and very rural. Many locally owned shops and goods, so makes it special for shopping, proximity to farms, like I said, and green space and art scene. What needs to change? Systemic was a word. It needs to change systemically. And then people point at the government, form of government, lack of leadership, addressing public safety and mental behavior health issues, and most of all, homelessness that got out of control. How are we going to take care of these people? They should not belong on the street. That's what somebody said. And also, we are losing our potential for being an art city and an art scene, and that's such an important indicator of a creative city. And then the high value visitor, well, if it's financial, you should see that some people do not spend locally, so you could question that value of that particular visitor. People that not go to our restaurants, museums, gardens, and so on. but most of the people really disagreed. So apart from what we call economic leakage, it's also about symbolic value, going viral. People that have probably less money but stay a long time and really love and live the experience and create our brand. Somebody who might come back. That was it.
Thank you, Frank. And team, great. Well, that was our first exercise to kick us off for the day. So to keep that momentum, I'm going to turn it back to Frank to introduce our next exercise. Some of you should be familiar with it as it was part of the homework, but I'll turn it back to you, Frank.
Okay, the vision of Travel Oregon for tourism in Oregon, right? So the vision of the company, and that was your homework. Now, if you have not seen it, I'm not gonna point a finger. I understand that we're all very busy. So what we're gonna do is pull it up here on a slide so you can all read it together with me, what the current vision is. Now, I'm very open to this. Should we change it or not? So my question to you is yes or no, and why? And maybe it's just a minor tweak, or maybe it's a radical change, or maybe you really love it. So just express the why. The current vision is a better life for all Oregonians through strong, sustainable local communities that welcome a diversity of explorers. And I'm really curious what you think. Is there anybody who wants to go first here? This is always the hardest part. Somebody needs to sacrifice himself. And also you can use a chat button, of course. We preserve everything that is published there as well. Okay, I see some people smiling, but do not dare to raise their hands. Emily, was it a move of your hand? Emily running?
Yes, a scratch of my head, but sure, I can go. I did, and I actually did do my homework, and there was actually an additional section to the vision on another page that I just popped into the chat that I liked substantially better. So I'm not exactly sure how it fits in, but to me, a better life feels pretty vague and passive. And so in that, I was looking for something a little bit more direct or descriptive or lively or actionable. And I guess kind of the whole vision for me feels pretty vague. We use a lot of buzzwords in the world right now, and I like to actually take those words and drill down into each one and say, what do I mean by that? What is strong? What is sustainable? What is a better life? And really just like dive in. And that's why I think that this second one that we have, we inspire travel that's more active. It drives community enhancement and economic development. Those are very descriptive through innovation and partnerships that really that means something. It has movement to me. We share stories. As we go further down in here, I picked this one apart too, in the same way, which is strengthen the industry. What is the industry? What are we referring to here? But yeah, I think that that's kind of my my take overall. I'll start the discussion with that at least. I might chime back in later.
That's a fantastic start. What I sometimes do to test these things is replace the name of a place by another place, and it's still correct, and maybe it's not distinct enough. Sierra, you raised your hand. What is your take on this?
Yeah, so one thing that I found really interesting when I was in college and we talked about vision statements was that vision statements should have concrete word use. And what they mean by that is that you should be able to visualize that. So for example, imagining a better life for Oregonians, we would all imagine something different. But when I ask you to imagine a pencil, it's really easy to imagine a pencil because that's a concrete thing. And so I have an interesting article that goes in on this here if you have time afterwards to just think about vision statements, but using more concrete terms. One example that they gave that I really loved was that NASA's put a man on the moon. Very easy to imagine, but like something that everyone collectively did. So when they asked the janitor was like, yeah, I'm doing my part to help put the man on the moon, you know, when they were cleaning the NASA facilities. Everyone united behind that because they could visually imagine it in their heads. And so I think this needs to be more visual, use more concrete word use so that people can get behind it and like imagine it themselves, and we're all having the same imaginary image as we look at this.
Thank you, Sierra. You know what? You had very good teacher at college. I totally agree with what they say. And my example, I used it in the internal workshop with the team of Travel Oregon is Bill Gates in 1985. In 5 years from now on, we will have a personal computer in every family in the US. That was his vision, right? Very concrete. And for those who are young, a personal computer, that was that television thing that we had on our desk, and we call it a computer, right? Elizabeth, you're next.
Thanks. I fully agree with what has just been expressed. I think the other filter that I use when I think about or evaluate vision statements is that it's describing how the world looks different as a result of something you did, right? And so when I look at the one that's in the chat, I like all the things that it's doing, but I'm not sure how the world looks different. And I think the one on the screen is talking about how the world looks different, but it's not descriptive enough. I also just want to make a point. I don't know why, I'll just throw this out there. I had a reaction to the word explorer. And I think the reason I had that reaction is that it still feels too connected to the idea of sort of colonialism in my brain. And I just had a reaction to it. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, I can only say here that we did a workshop with the tribes already, and that was exactly their feedback. They get it. What they want to say here is somebody who's curious, but it's a very loaded word for them. And that was also echoed by the Travel Oregon team themselves. So I think explorer is a dangerous word. Yeah, absolutely.
And actually, just a point, we spoke with the Mount Hood team yesterday too, and the same term colonialism came out with the word explorer. So very, very high on our radar to look at that a lot more closely. So thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Liora, do I pronounce that correctly, or is it Liora? Sponko.
Yeah, Liora.
Liora, because you're so nodding your head. I think she needs to say something about this.
I think everyone's this is articulating everything well, and I agree with all of those points. So the only thing, just to reinforce everything that's been said, this is a very interesting conversation. Yeah, I like that, like vision statements to be inspiring and to talk about like what does the future look like. But I also like a lot of Emily's comments about the specifics of what that means. So there's probably, I guess I didn't do my homework, but I do understand there's gonna be multiple components to this. But what I like about what's in the statement already, that like the strong, sustainable local communities. And that was my comment in the breakout session, that any of the work that you're all doing in tourism, it is benefiting local communities. And I know that you all have that intention through all of the programs that you do. And having that be at the center seems important, that whatever, the impacts of tourism should only positively impact a local community. And there are a lot of cases, and I don't know if it's Portland's the case. I don't live in Portland, but I live in Bend. And there's a lot of reaction about tourism, and is it too much, and is it hurting the community, and is it hurting the land? And so to me, like tourism is such the opportunity to provide that benefit to local communities. So I like that sustainable local piece being at the center of it.
Yeah, that's noted. Absolutely. Shannon, you, not our Shannon, but Shannon Hiller-Webb, you raised your hand as well. And then we go to Dave. And for all the others, you please write down in the chat button, because then we need to move to the next exercise. But first you, Shannon.
Thank you. So I echo everyone's point that I felt like if you would have removed the word Oregonians, you could have replaced it with any other word and it would have been the most, benign general statement, and not emoting what is so unique to us, our strength, but visually we have such unique terrain amongst our full state that I think you could visually amplify our uniqueness. And I think actually someone in the chat may have just written something very similar in our sandy shores to our evergreen mountains and our desert plains. These are vibrant visual statements that are emotive. And I think that whatever the statement lands on, it needs to be an emotive statement representative of our state and our people.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Dave, last
Hi,
thing.
so my thought in regard to vision statements, and particularly for those of us in the tourism sector, is to really challenge ourselves as a group to think about who are we trying to vision for. Often we kind of, in every industry, we kind of get into our own bubble and we start using our own buzzwords and things of that sort. So who are we trying to inspire, particularly with this vision? I always use as a guiding rule of thumb for me, and as I'm running my destination, is I have to be able to explain on the back of an envelope to multiple stakeholders what we do and what the value of it is. So I think it's a really important thing. And I think sometimes crackerjack plain language goes a long way versus us, liking language that's a little bit fashionable.
Yeah.
I don't have a correction. I just the thought to help lead us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in the beginning, somebody touched already on buzzwords and container words. That's what we say over here. Can you give an example of one of these words, in particular in this statement, Dave? Just curious what you would pick.
Yeah, I think sustainable is kind of what does that mean, and what does it mean to who? Does it mean that the waters are clean and that people can fish? Does it mean that that we can have a welcoming to manufacturing facilities that perhaps will use up natural resources? Does sustainable mean economic growth, where we begin losing ground because it's great to build 10 or 15 more hotels in a shopping mall? I think sustainable is kind of, it's never clear to me what that means to who, based on who you're talking to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a confusing word. And if you look up the definition of the United Nations, the Sustainable Global Goals, it's much broader. It's not only green, it's also about social rights. It's about racism and all these things. So for some people, it means a small definition, and for some people, it's really broad. Wow, this was very, very good feedback, and that we will take with us and do something with it. Okay, we promised a break. How many minutes will we give them, Shannon?
We'll do 10 minutes. So if you want to come back at 10:25, we'll move on to the back half of our discussion. So feel free to go grab a drink, whatever you need to do, and we'll see you back in 10. All right, welcome back, everybody. We had a good quick break, and we're going to keep moving here. So our next exercise touches a bit more deeper on the value of the customer and the visitor. So I'm going to turn it back to Frank to introduce this next exercise, and we'll send you back into breakout rooms.
Now, okay, everybody, visitors and attracting visitors. And this echoes a bit the last question when we were in the first breakout session, remember, about the high value visitors. And Kevin brought already up in the chat that Travel Oregon is wrestling a little bit high value visitor versus welcoming everybody. And I think that's a very important thing. In destination management or regenerative tourism, there's a concept of attracting the right visitor. And what they actually want to say is that people that add value to the community, to nature and natural environment, and also socially and also financially. But we're not gonna use that if it causes in people's mind confusion, because welcoming is what you need to be, but what you are is also marketeers. So you can decide who we are going to focus on, right? Who we're gonna invite and where are we gonna focus our efforts. And that's what we quickly wanna discuss with you. So that who you can answer that psychographically, like, you know, outdoor adventures and that kind of expressions you have, or you can really go all down the funnel and say people that have a passion for instance, history buffs or craft beer lovers or something like that. So, and what we want to know is what is the highest priority, what is the lowest priority, what is a low-hanging fruit, what could be a long shot, and so on. Send us to the breakout rooms and then I'll explain it again. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
I thought we would have the same group again. I see Elizabeth, Silke, Billy, but there is Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer. We haven't met you today. And Elisa or Eliza?
Actually, EJ, thank you. Sorry I was late.
EJ, yeah, fantastic. Okay, who wants to go first? Let's start with the most difficult. What is the lowest priority? What is the kind of visitor that you probably, when they are there, you're welcoming to them, but that you're not going to focus on?
The business, I mean, maybe the business tourists or the ones that have to come.
Yeah, that's a cunning way to answer this question. They have to come anyway, right? So why should we put effort in it? But for sure, other people will think differently. People that want to attract people for, I don't know, conferences and meeting rooms and spaces and so on. Okay, good point. And again, if you're shy, there is the chat box, so you can use that as well. Billy, you made a point in the previous conversation we had that, yeah, people that do not spend locally is probably not the ones we have to target. Is that right?
Yeah, I have said that. I would say, you know, if we know ahead of time, it's hard to say if you know ahead of time, and you have to look at, you know, internationally, we looked at profiles of visitors and learn from other countries. So I think it is a profile of a traveler. And if one has a tendency to not spend in a balanced way, the way I call it, then maybe it is a lower priority. It shouldn't mean that it should be ignored necessarily, because there's other benefits possibly. But where my brain went, but I don't know how to say it, so I'm just gonna blurt it out for everybody who knows me. That's what I do. Is, you know, people that throw the trash out on our streets and beaches and don't take care of things that that don't want to take care of our environment and our destination, our city. So I don't know, how do you know ahead of time if this person will do that? I don't know, but that would be a very low priority for me that we attract people like that.
Yeah, and I think you can prioritize in your messaging and communication and talk to people about that, right? That's, for instance, what Colorado started to do 2 years ago with the no traces left and so on. Okay, no, great points. What else could be the low priority, the kind of visitor that probably does not add the value that you are seeking for your city? Jennifer, I didn't hear you yet.
Something else that came up in the last breakout room I was in was the visitor who doesn't take the time to learn about and respect the local communities and may result in residents even feeling unsafe. Again, that's a difficult thing to have on a profile, but visitors who aren't interested in really getting to know and understanding the people in the place that they're visiting would be a lower priority, I would say.
Okay. I have a question, and maybe it's a very dumb question, but I don't live there. Do you also have problems in Portland? We have that in Europe, like young people, most time young people, very cheap air flights, and they behave very nicely in their own place, like they live in London or Manchester or Antwerp or Brussels or Barcelona, and then go to another place and they're like party animals and leaving behind a lot of litter and making a lot of noise. Is that also a phenomenon over there?
I would like to see a place where it doesn't happen, I guess.
Yeah.
I think the way that someone put it in the last session that I really appreciated it was someone from the Willamette Falls Trust, who I don't believe is in this room. But they said that sort of the code of conduct that they would like to set for their visitor is that an Indigenous mother could come and visit on a weekday at 10 a.m. and feel safe and respected there. And I don't know, what their experiences have been otherwise, but I think that's, safety of our diverse communities is a big priority, and I worry about visitors coming who don't understand that and may make them feel unsafe.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great point. We call it visitor pressure, not being informed how people behave with each other in a place. We learned that the hard way in New Zealand. Okay, and Sarah brought also up a good point. I think the lowest priority visitors would be the people who come just to take away from the place, right? We call that extracting, like the extracting visitor, and it should be mutual, right? Like only using our tax-free shopping, taking the risky photos. Maybe you saw the Instagram movie that New Zealand made, really fun, about these stupid Instagrammers, and they stand on the edge of a cliff and they fall off, and because you're a bucket list thing, right? One picture of Portland and well, who's next? Right, thank you. Okay, let's move to possibilities soon to be. Is there low-hanging fruit? Maybe something we have overlooked, group of people we really can target? And after COVID-19, maybe the landscape has been changed, and you might think now on other people.
I'd like to add in here something that I've seen since some of our racial justice protests is that we've actually had a lot more Black visitors to the city. And I think that, like attracting some of those people who, traditionally Oregon was not great with, and Portland, like it is a great kind of soon to be category as people who come here because now they do feel welcome. Now they do feel like we care about them.
Wow, that's great to hear. So that resonated, that you all took action and work on it, and that they can feel safe. And no, absolutely. Yeah, in the next exercise, we will speak more about that and what kind of product do you need and so on. Thank you for the link, Kevin. Silke, What are your thoughts? Do you see possibilities?
I agree with Sarah, kind of the possibility of reaching out more to BIPOC communities. And because the reputation is that Portland is the whitest city in the United States. However, when you come out here to Washington County, that's not the case. And we are extremely diverse. And I think that when people come here, they're very surprised of the diversity. And I think that is low-hanging fruit that I think that we need to get those travelers aware of our destination, as well as to get them here and to get them here in Oregon.
Yeah, I hear the saying, creating more awareness about the fact that we are welcoming diversity to attract that kind of visitor, right? Okay, what is happening?
Sorry about that.
No worries, no
I
worries.
have link so I could copy it, and then I just messed everything up.
Okay, yeah, Billy, you want to say something? You raised your hand.
Yes, is my thing on? Yeah. I think it is, we're obviously thinking statewide, but we are in the Portland region. So I think that
you can speak for Portland. That's the exercise. You can.
Yeah,
speak
so it is different everywhere is all I'm saying. Even within our Portland region, it might be very different because we're obviously urban and rural. So I think that I just wanted to make that point. And so I think in the same direction is also Portland already has a very good reputation, and our research shows that we're attracting LGBTQ plus. And I think that is continuing to be very positive for us. So I think that could be considered, continuing to market to and be very welcoming. But I also have to say, this is a little bit the business traveler, which was a great comment by you, EJ, earlier, but I think the leisure traveler. So when leisure travel comes back, which obviously we know right now, business travel is not happening. That is the Tuesday, if there's a hotel in our group, I'm not sure, but Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday business is the leisure the business traveler, and to get more of the business traveler to extend 1 or 2 days. In those 1 or 2 days, they're leisure travelers. They will do the tours. They will go out to more meals. They will enjoy the art. So extending business travelers stay. And I think all of us who've traveled on business, right, doing that already. And I think that is a low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, no, great. We started with saying probably low priority, and now you say no, it's absolutely low-hanging fruit. Yeah, there are no bad ideas in this game. So thank you for that. One last question, Billy, for you. Meeting tourism, will that come back? Because I don't know the answer.
You mean the conference, convention, business, meeting business, small and large? Yes, so huge effort on that part. Yes, we are seeing it now. We were so dang thrilled last weekend to have our first citywide back in Portland, in obviously at a much smaller scale. We have to be absolutely honest, that the numbers of participants, nevertheless, it is happening, and we are continuing to put a lot of effort. It is besides leisure travel, convention travel is a huge priority for us at Travel Portland. As we all know, when you have citywides in town, that creates immense compression. And again, conventioneers tend to come early and stay late as well. And then they actually leave Portland and they go into the region, they go into the entire state. So the convention business is super important. And we do believe that it will continue, but it will also have major changes, like everything else. So to stay ahead of what these changes will be, but it will continue because we all know doing business in person can, it's not being, Zoom can fill in a lot, but not all of that relationship within doing business. and convention and learning and everything that comes with a convention, meetings, that's all in there, and trade shows, all of that. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's our take on it.
No, absolutely. I think, no, it's great what you say.
Well, and I know I started with business, but is it, I mean, I like that Billy's saying like some people come back, but it'll be those people that are more likely to want to spend the whole weekend, the extra time there, right? Like the people that really want to be tourists along with their convention.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think business travel, right? You have the individual, the one that comes to, you know, to call on the company and sells to Intel, you know, or there's all those business travelers that come on their own, and the motivation is they need to go see their customer. And then of course that's a business traveler. Then there's different kinds of business travelers, right? And then there's conventioneers who are conventioneers, and it's also a business, but they need to choose to attend the convention in the first place. Where business traveler, if they need to see Intel, they're gonna go see Intel. No matter what. So I think there is differences within that, but yes, there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can also play there in your targeting, like what New York is doing during Black History Month, and the entire business community is on board with that. And that's fantastic. You could do conferences about history and so on. Great. And then is there a long shot? Something like, hey, maybe we need to look over time into this niche or this niche. Are there any ideas about that? And this could be anything from history buffs to, you know what, in Europe, we have beehive tourism that is exploding now in Slovenia. And they target only young urban families from the north, and it sells as hell, because there is a market potential. Those things like, I don't know. Razia, you're so smiling, so you want to say something?
Well, I would love to, but first I want to let Elizabeth go. She raised her hand.
Okay, sorry, I didn't see that.
No worries.
First?
I don't really know which thing this falls into, but just an observation of a trend that I see amongst younger people. You know, I have teenage daughters and am exposed to all of their friends, and they've been going through the college search process, right? And I'll tell you that their identification with their values is so strong that and I don't know if this is a good thing. I'm not condoning it. But what I'm saying is that having grown up in a, especially in Portland, a very blue, progressive area, they have absolutely zero interest in going to school in a red state. So I bring this up just to say that I think amongst the younger demographic, there is a realigning of all of their actions based on their values. And so in that unexplored category, I think there really is something about, I don't know that it's good, because I think it contributes potentially to the, you know, polarization of our community and our society. But I do know that young people, what I'm seeing, have no interest in going places that aren't aligned with their values.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, in city marketing, we have 4 basic targeted audiences. It's residents, it's visitors, it's businesses, and the 4th one is students and academia, right? And they go where their value system will be understood, right? So that's also very competitive. Kevin, can you pitch? You're the last. Can you pitch very shortly your idea?
Yeah, and actually it will be very short. Elizabeth, I was just going to kind of go where Elizabeth went as far as it's hard not to get political, but I mean, Oregon and Portland have a history of challenging the status quo and making change and fighting some of these fights. So there's an audience there to consider for sure.
Okay, thank you.
I have to then add though, you know, not all parts of Oregon are like that. You know, we have a lot of rural parts and they feel already forgotten in the urban rural divide. So I just would caution us, because we want them to come to Portland as well. And we want to go to them. So I think that's problematic as well.
Yeah, I see your point, but it's of course not saying no to people. You're not welcome. It's more like where we gonna spend our marketing money and who we're really gonna target, right? Okay, I see you in a moment back, but first we go to the main room and just share some.
Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had some good discussion. I think we've got everyone back. So you know what, in essence of time, we'll get right into a quick share back about what you discussed. Amy, you can go first.
Thanks, Shannon. Great discussion here. So we started with low priority, and this was getting back to just seeing a legitimate tourist or visitor. So talking about in the past, Oregon has seen some unrest, and that they'd like to see the real visitor come back, a guest that's coming to experience rather than to participate in this. And it came out, people are not interested in marketing to racists or people that don't align with the values of Oregon. Soon to be, we had the overnight stays from within neighboring Oregon regions. We saw this as some of the lowest hanging fruit. And then next, which also falls into this, but getting people back that were fans of Oregon before, prior to the pandemic, prior to some unrest, people that have an affinity for the city, know it for the outdoor recreation, and want to come back. As well, the drive market, talking about how people will likely be more comfortable to drive possibly before they get on their next flight. Talking about people coming from warmer climates, even within the US. So Phoenix was an example, and that they like to get away to experience the temperate climate of Oregon and just get a break from that very hot weather. What we'd like to see are people coming interested in education about Indigenous peoples and history. And we spoke about how this has been developed at lots of attractions, that there's now more of a story being told. And as well, for unexplored, we spoke about dance. There's a great dance community that Emily told us all about. People can go there, they can take a class or look at a calendar of shows. So appealing to that dancer or people interested in dance. Although already well known for outdoors, talking about the boating that can be done with the Columbia River, there's so much boating. So doing an appeal to that boating market. And again, arts and culture, just when people think about Oregon and think about Portland, making sure they think this is a city I can go to and experience arts and culture. Thank you. And if anyone has from my group has anything to add, please feel free to share it in the chat.
Thanks, Amy. Those are really great insights. Thanks, team. Frank, what about yourself?
Oh, thank you. We had a great conversation and it felt again we had not enough time here. Low priority, someone said business tourists, but those that really have to come. So why should we bother put effort in it? Business tourists come back. People that don't spend locally, people that litter and don't take care of the environment, somebody who does not respect the local community, somebody who is not interested in getting to know and understanding people, who does not put effort in it. Because the safety of our diverse community is very important. The people who come just to take away from the place, people that extract, as we call it. Soon to be, there is somebody said who is at the source that they see an increase of Black visitors coming to Portland since the protests. So that's an indication that Black people know now that they are more safe. BIPOC communities, because of reputation that Portland is the whitest city in the US, but it's not necessarily the case. So that's a good thing. There's a turning point. LGBTQ communities, Portland has a lot to offer for them, and you should look into that. That's also low-hanging fruit. That kind of business traveler that really goes for leisure, like stay over the weekend, want to see the museums, the restaurants, that's somebody in the low-hanging fruit. Group conferences, we don't know whether they soon will return. So maybe that's a soon to be, maybe that's a long shot. And then for the unexplored, young people. So as you all know, young people are really, really loud these days about their values. And they have very little interest in going to places that do not align with their values. And there is a fantastic opportunity for Portland, people that challenge the status quo, but be mindful, you're welcoming to everybody. So people from conservative regions in Oregon, of course, they always welcome. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Frank and team. Another great discussion. Rebecca.
We had a great discussion too. It kind of started off with who we would want to attract or see more of, and those would be people that have an environmental consciousness and or ecotourists perhaps, and history buffs, and we're talking about both recorded history and also Indigenous history. And then we talked about realistically what markets have we had and what we need to bring back. And so we talked a bit about the convention visitor, that this is a visitor that that drives the economy for Portland and for Oregon. And also it provides a good introduction to what Oregon is all about, but also the changing needs of wineries, so that it's now quality over quantity. We talked a little bit about how we like people that want to learn new perspectives and perhaps change their mind on something, and that really want to be part of the community. We want to see a little bit less of closed-minded people on that same sort of the opposite end of the sphere there. And we talked a little bit about how, we don't want to exclude anyone, but at the same time, we want to lead by example, and that perhaps that's up to the marketers to some extent, to show what we value in Oregon, what experiences we want to promote, and what will bring those people that don't necessarily want us to roll out the red carpet so we can lie down and watch a Lakers game. But we also, somebody brought up very aptly that we just want people that are kind. Maybe it's less about demographics, and we don't want mean and hateful people. And I think that was the gist of it. Did I miss anything? Anyone on my team? Okay,
thanks. Great. Thanks, Rebecca and team. And William.
Yeah, so I won't duplicate. We talked about the diversity of the region, and that it's the diversity of the region also attracts a lot of different audiences. So it's hard to sort of pinpoint it when you look at the region. Two groups that were identified were locals. Residents are an important target audience. And when it comes to the next exercise, when we're going to talk about development, when you build it for locals who can enjoy it, then you can attract those kind of visitors. And then also Oregonians who are rediscovering their state as a result of the pandemic. So the drive market has really grown in importance, and that's an opportunity to continue. And speaking of the diversity of the region, internationally, there's an opportunity to position Oregon as a one-stop shop to visit the US. Because everything the US offers, it might not be the number one thing, but you can experience it all in Portland and Oregon, where Portland is the funnel that brings people in, and then we can distribute them around the state. I'll leave it there.
Great, thanks, William and team. All right, our last exercise for the day. So how do we get there? Lots of really great discussion around, the vision, what we love about Portland, what we want to change, the visitors we want to attract. So how do we make that all come true? So I'll turn it back to you, Frank, to set us up.
Okay, so vision is okay, and a mission is okay, and strategy is okay, but what are we going to do, right? That's the question. And when I had the introduction in my breakout session, the expectations of the people was exchanging ideas. This is your moment. That's what we're going to do. We're going to exchange ideas. We call that in consultant world ideation, call it a brainstorm. That's what we're going to do. About what? Next slide, please. About the question, what needs to be true? What needs to be true? What? For the social change, for the environmental change, from the economic change. And I think your ideal visitor is the one in the intersection of the three circles, right? The one that does not extract, but that really adds value, probably by staying longer, having more respect, more interest, value systems, all these things. Now we want with you to reflect on, are we ready for this, right? What needs to be true for product and promotion? Because there are a lot of challenges about sustainability, about climate change, about things that are changing in the environment, about racism and riots. And so all these things you need to address. So is my product ready? And is my promotion ready? And you really can go all the way. We can define product very broad. Is it a service? Is it a service level? Do we need to build more accommodation? Do we need to support financially staff workers? Is it new walking tours? Do we need a sort of new craft brewery experiences? Use your imagination, but also your background and your experience. And how are we going to communicate to these people? Because if you're really going to target other kinds of people, if you say business people, fine. How are you going to find them? If you say young people, how are you going to talk to them, right? Think about all that. And this is the exercise that really we have the most time off, so there is less pressure. We really want to harvest all the ideas, and if there is time, we're going to prioritize them. We're going to pinpoint them at a grid, and we're going to say what is really feasible, right? Long-term, short-term, or financially, and what is really urgent. What is the most urgent, most pressing things? That's what we're going to do. You will be sent to a breakout session. There will be a facilitator, and there will be that Jamboard, you know, where we can use our sticky notes or write down texts and then play with it. Okay, let's move to the breakout sessions. Shannon, thank you.
Good luck.
All right, everybody, again. These are all familiar faces. Feels like we are gamers that play together online. It feels still strange for me, the virtual workshops. Normally we do that in a space, and the DMO or the one who invites brings coffee and pie, and after an hour everybody's talking to each other. Nobody pays attention what we are saying. So I miss that a little bit, that buzz. But yeah, people, this is just in half an hour, and let's give one spy. Let's brainstorm ideas. Whatever comes in your mind. This is what we miss, Frank, in Portland. This is what we need to build. This is where we need to invest. This is how we're going to communicate. Let's start with product. Any ideas? Tangible stuff? Accommodation? Who wants to go first?
Yeah. So
okay. Grazia, yeah, Grazia,
well,
your hand.
So, you know, I'm hyper focused on the arts and culture, heritage and humanities, and I think some of the things, if we're talking about Portland metro area, the product of our artists, our creatives, you know, it was mentioned by Chanda Hall earlier that many artists are being priced out, and so we're losing that talent. Thankfully, in Washington County, we're gaining a lot of that talent. But I think if we're going to look at the arts and arts production as a product, we need to support them. Like, how can we advocate more to housing opportunities or to grant opportunities so that they return as a thriving industry? Because again, that is one of the tourism attractions.
Okay, no, great. Is this promotion, or do you also need something? Do we need to build something like a landmark, sort of big house where you can have 50 young creatives for a very low, something like that? Is it?
I think it's really for them, it's making sure that they, as residents of our communities, have the foundation they need, that they have housing security, that they have some income security, because many artists kind of supplement between a W-2 job and gig work, doing murals, commissions, sculptures, happenings. So just making sure that they, as the creative industry, have the support that they need. And then following that, promotion comes with that, right? They're doing something in the public arena. They're going to be their own promotion advocate. They're bringing in their own families who, again, are residents here, which then goes viral through our social media. And we, like Tualatin Valley Creates, we amplify the work of these artists. So it's we already have the promotion mechanism in place. But if there aren't people creating things for us to promote, that's where I need to start, is making sure that they have the resources that they need, that they can stay here.
Yeah. From your point of view, how urgent is this? Is this really like we should start action immediately right now?
Oh yeah, no, we've been working on this for the last year and a half. So the arts industry in the Portland metro area, when surveying the artists, they lost 86% of their income overnight when the state closed, and their contracts ended, and our theater houses needed to close their doors because they couldn't have people in due to, viral loads. And so as Chanda was mentioning earlier, so they're losing their income, they can't afford their apartments, and they're moving out of the city, they're moving out of the metro area. Many artists that our organization surveyed, not only moved from Portland to the outskirts like Washington County, Beaverton, Hillsborough, but they moved out of state. So we saw artists move to the Midwest back into their parents' houses, and these are artists in their, I'll say in their 40s, that was never part of their life plan, but we entirely lost them as creatives. So it wasn't just a relocation, and then who knows what they're doing now in their new state location.
Sorry for interrupting, but can I challenge you a bit on this? How feasible is it? And I'll explain my question. I hear that in every state in the United States, affordability, gentrification, locals are pushed out, the rich buy everything.
Yeah.
Is that not a federal issue actually, or can this be solved? So feasibility is also, you need money, right, to fix this?
In a couple of different ways. So we need policy that maintains that big developers can't come in and completely wipe out neighborhoods, or if they're going to develop, let's say an apartment building or a condo building, that there is some regulation to making sure that those expenses are still within kind of the bell curve of what the residential opportunities are. So that comes to a local policy that can be held at a city or at a county or at a state policy level. So that's your housing. When it comes to money, right, we've been watching on a federal level, we've been watching the PPP money, we've been watching the ARP money that's coming out, the CARES funding. So these are emergency funding, right? So, but that federal money trickles into the state, which then trickles into the counties and trickles into our cities. So when we're talking about the arts, that money can't just be this global, oh, you're a business, you can go ahead and apply, because the arts businesses are so extremely different. And the artists themselves are 1099 workers. So we're talking about gig workers who aren't always eligible for unemployment. So when we talk about the arts, we need to change some of that language, and we need to actually pocket some of that money specific to the arts. And I know there's a lot of people on this call who are nonprofits who have also, in their own ways, not been eligible for some of that federal and state funding. So as advocates for making sure that our local communities are thriving so the tourists come in, we are constantly talking about, let's actually identify what a business is and identify what a gig worker is so they can stay here. And then we continue to talk about, okay, so housing security, how can we change policy to make housing security?
Yeah, absolutely. It could be grants, it could be policy, it could be also identification, new status for artists and so on. Do you see also a role, like that's the power of Travel Oregon, like communicating towards arts communities, even outside the state, like, hey, you're very welcome here?
Yeah, well, I mean, look at like some of the conversations everybody's been bringing up this morning is if we don't have the businesses here and we don't have the energy that lives here, what are we advocating for? Like, come walk the parks that aren't maintained because the employees can't live here. Come, like, enjoy our farms or our breweries who are owned by people who have transplanted from somewhere else who don't embody the culture of Oregon. So I think all of our tourism agencies can be advocates on that level. You know, can say, hey, we need more of the smaller housing units on big properties. We can convert 400 and something square feet into an apartment. These are things that are technically no cost to the local governments, but that policy change means that we can make more housing here, which can reduce the cost of living expenses here as well.
Can I, as a foreigner, visit an artist's workshop in Portland?
Totally. Oh yeah, yeah. So there are, over the last 20 years, there've been really wonderful examples of this, and where I don't know if anybody on the call ever went to the Everett Street Lofts, where they committed that building to studio spaces on the ground floor and living spaces in some of those units and going up in the building. It was a multi-story building. The Regional Arts and Culture Council is advocating to bring those kind of opportunities back. So we have working artists in the metro area, in the places tourists are already coming, and that you can see creativity alive. And so here in Washington County, we're talking about maker spaces and how can we utilize some of the, we're all looking at empty malls. We're all looking at some of our Main Street areas have reduced occupancy. Many of those business owners aren't going to come back. They didn't survive this. And so, okay, so how do we adjust some of the urban development dollars to offset some of those leases to bring the makers back into those spaces? Because I think we all know when the artists are there first, then the residents come, then the gentrification comes, and then it's the constant ebb and flow of our city centers. So some of that advocacy, we've seen it in the Portland metro area 20 years ago. We saw it in the 80s when the Pearl District was designated. We're seeing it now in Washington County with Hillsborough now has a cultural art district. We're watching Tiger. These are some of our other cities outside of Portland. They're on the west side. We're watching some of these other smaller cities say, okay, we have commercial space opportunity. We have federal dollars in our local hands, and we have artists that need audiences and need housing security. So let's put that together and actually make something that's really exciting for people to come see, not only the residents but also the people visiting.
Yeah. Thank you. No, this is great. This is very interesting, and it's a very urban way of thinking, and yeah, I love it. So yeah, Emily, I think it's really urgent, but probably that one more here, yeah, and then makerspace is a more tangible idea. That's probably even more feasible. Okay, somebody else who wants to react here? Who has? Yeah, EJ.
I wanted to kind of piggyback on that, and she said makerspace is finally, but that like economic support for small local businesses, because and artists, because that is really a lot of our culture, and that people want to. I mean, I personally love to travel to other places and go to small businesses and experience and talk to local people. I know there are people that come, that come to Oregon for getting no sales tax and like to do that too, but that that interaction, if we can preserve that through maker spaces, incubator spaces, cooperatives aren't very common in Oregon yet, like more cooperative development, business development and support for that. And then I had another topic of that I'm personally concerned about, but I heard from another community in Oregon that's outside of the metro area is, and this is policy again around short-term rentals, and that one of our communities that's a really, you've probably heard of Mcminnville already. I don't know if you've been there, but if they've been on your groups yet, but they have a huge wine industry and this great downtown. And they have so many houses that have been converted to short-term rentals that the locals feel like they're not welcome downtown anymore. And so it kind of, and they're also displaced from downtown because people can make a lot more money off of renting short-term rentals. So how do we, I mean, in my community, I want more short-term rentals in our downtown, but I want to make sure that we don't end up with too many. So how do we, I mean, that's such a trend that the big cities have addressed, but not the smaller communities in Oregon how do we help create that policy around, and also like that community also has added an amazing like new hotel, right? Like how do we create these kind of locally owned hotels too, to kind of counterbalance that, to balance with people staying in homes, you know, as Airbnb, because those are the different levels of experience that visitors are going to want to really be involved in our culture.
Yeah, we want to have boutique hotels that tell the story of where I am and where I can drink the wine of Oregon, of course. Do you feel that Portland, I hear that often, neighborhoods, are they known enough outside Portland? And is there a role that to make them more, to give them more distinct identity, like the big cities do? You never go to Paris, right? It's just 1 hour from here. You go to Montmartre or you go to Auteuil or something like.
Well, and I could even say that across the state, in Portland region and across the state, like I think we really generalize things when it comes to tourism, where we really highlight like come to Portland. But you're right, like there's all these communities that have totally different cultures and atmospheres and tastes. And then we say like, you know, the Willamette Valley, and like there's all these communities that are so different within that area. How do we highlight? I think those are the stories that people are going to want to hear, to come, especially foreign tourists, like what's beyond just this idea of Portland, or going to Mount Hood or going to the coast, but like what are all the other things in between? Because we, you know, in COVID times, we want to get away from the crowds, right? We want to go somewhere where not everyone else is at. We don't want to go to Disneyland anymore or the Eiffel Tower.
Eiffel Tower, I'm not sure. I think it's already crowded again. Yeah, what keeps me surprising is how short memories of tourists can be. Okay, yeah, great ideas. I'm looking for the next 18 minutes to new ideas. This is your moment. What about niches? What about walking tours? What about accommodation? What about service level? What about volunteers? What about residents engagement? Ambassadors programs? And maybe you're already doing it. Fine. Let me know. So Silke. It's probably the only name I can pronounce correctly here.
And I appreciate that. So I agree with what EJ was saying, because here in Washington County, we are a business travel destination. So all of our hotel products reflect that. What we don't have those boutique hotels. We have a couple. We don't have nearly enough of those. So here we want to have people come explore our area, our destination, and we want them to have a great local experience, but yet we don't have those local hotels for them to stay in. I don't know if we have the issues with Airbnb type of rentals that Mcminnville has, and other destinations throughout the state have, because we do have a few, and in our wine country, because there are no accommodations, our Airbnbs are the only places that they can stay. But fortunately, a lot of farms and wineries, vineyards, they do offer some kind of Airbnb accommodation. So at least we're moving to that direction. But I think the hotel product, we have a lot of hotels out here in Washington County and in the entire Portland metro, but it doesn't advance the whole culture of what Washington County is. And as I mentioned earlier, Tualatin Valley / Washington County is a lot different of a destination than Portland is. Portland is completely different in terms of what they offer and what we offer, but we work closely together and getting people to understand that there's more than just downtown Portland, and to really explore more of the region is extremely important. And go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you, but yeah, I'm very passionate about this apparently. Airbnb is different in every place. Like some places partner with Airbnb and they really help for dispersal. Like Airbnb do promote only the outskirts of the city. And my place where I live, for instance, there is a limitation, only 50 days, because otherwise it's going to be a sort of competition with free market businesses that have to pay taxes and they don't, and that kind of thing. So what's your point? Could they be helpful here?
Absolutely. And so we're one of the counties that does get transient lodging tax revenue from Airbnb. So financially or economically, we do see some of that dollars in terms of those transient lodging taxes. But because all of our hotel product is centered around the business community, so they're in the populated areas such as Hillsborough, Beaverton, and they're close to Intel, Nike, the high-tech corridor. So we don't really have anything out in the rural areas and in our wine country. So that's where Airbnb does become an essential lodging partner, because I think not just us, but also in the Willamette Valley, we've complained to each other that there is no lodging accommodation for people who want to go into wine country.
True, we did a workshop with Willamette Valley, and that's their main problem. There is not enough accommodation. So yeah, and to Kevin's point, that's an ideal also situation to connect residents with visitors, and then you're selecting already people that are willing to do that, to live with the locals and so on. Yeah, great point here. Yeah, Billy, you raised your hand.
Yes, I first of all want to say what Silke said. We worked on this a lot together, that we didn't have in the Portland region wine country any accommodations. And then in addition to that, it's really about who's going to work in the right channels. Not all consumers are buying direct, period. So it is also a product question. Sarah on the call here, she works with a lot of, third parties or whatever you want to call them, Expedias and so on. So I think that's super important, that you can have the product available, but you also need it to be, the product needs to be willing to be in a lot of channels in order to be successful. Then you can't control that, of course. So I just wanted to say that. I want to say Portland specific, winter is we live here, so we have all the right gear. We can go anywhere. But from a visitor perspective, winter is dreary. And we need winter product, indoor product, signature, event product, large indoor product that's obviously authentic to us. I'm not going to want something that isn't who we are. But in the winter, so let's just say our low time has always been November through March. And it used to be a lot longer. So we've done really well with chipping away on the really, really low months. And now we say November through March. But winter product, right? Not everybody's gonna sadly go on a bike tour with Sarah, because not everybody's just gonna wanna do that. So I think winter product is a big need and has been a big need. And I don't think Portland is necessarily unique in that. It is simply a 4 seasons type problem. So, or, challenge. So I just want to put that out there.
What could be winter product indoor? What are you thinking on a very concrete level?
Well, the Portland Art Museum is the oldest art museum this side of the Mississippi. But is it so unique that people come from all over to draw to it? Is it the number one thing? There's not one piece that people go there would be motivated by. But is it a signature event, an indoor culinary event? Is it, we have Feast, but Feast is in September. Well, in September, we used to not have any hotel rooms. So I really didn't promote it internationally because there was no hotel room. So the hotel rooms were through the roof. or the hotels wouldn't give, wholesale rates during that time, and so on. So I think the seasonality of when people want and need business and the city can absorb business and what the offerings are is a need for us in the city, in the region, and in the state, I believe.
Okay, thank you. No, great points. And I think there's also a fantastic idea of EJ here, training for frontline staff. Is it like a DEI training that you're thinking about, EJ, or?
I was also just thinking like the history, like it's really, if you learn the history of protesting in Oregon, it's really cool. Or if you talk about homeless and like, well, they all want to live here just like we want to live here because it's a really cool place to live. So if you just changing that perspective, I mean, I'm from a downtown organization, so we're always trying to change the perception that we need more parking, so that's sort of like, how do we give messages or give them ways to spin it so that people aren't automatically focusing on the negative when they call, like, I'm coming for business, but I've heard that Portland's, is there going to be a protest? Is someone going to bomb my hotel? Burn my hotel down? Like, how do we change those perspectives in a really positive way? And our frontline staff, like those people, a lot of them making minimum wage, are really the ones that we're expecting them to change those perceptions. They're the ones that are in contact with people when phone calls come in or when people show up.
That's quite intense what you say. I think that's then priority number one, probably, because if unhappy residents, I think that is the biggest business risk for everybody. And also your brand plays against you, because Americans are known in Europe as very friendly and open, and you're always welcome. So yeah, no, absolutely. I think that is a very high priority and probably feasible, right? It's really training and incentives for the people and give them a pat on the shoulder even. Okay, Sarah, you're on fire on the chat button as well. I just want to come back quickly on you say, yeah, these are particular neighborhoods and they should be known more for their own stories. How would you do that? Is it walking tours? Is it signage? Is it any ideas there?
Oh, that is a good question. I think having product in all those areas definitely is huge. And right now, our walking tour industry is really, really small, given, we've seen, and not just because of COVID, but certainly a lot of it, we don't have a lot of product in those neighborhoods. So that's a big thing. I think that, when we do market the city, I think that kind of training is really important as well, and people generally think of going to downtown when they visit a city. They don't think of going to the neighborhoods. But here, because, of long-term issues in downtown, which include, no real support for people living on the streets and lots of, just the lack of businesses being invested down there, which isn't a new thing, has been exacerbated by COVID. So focusing on how great the neighborhoods are in marketing, I think would be wonderful. And showing how close everything is from downtown would also be good. And then, just to back up what Elisa said, that training is so important. So many of the people that I've experienced, they're, who I've heard from their guests, they've said things, that make me believe they've never been to parts of the city, they talk about downtown being destroyed when it's not, or they talk about, the inner neighborhoods as not being distinct from downtown when they're very, very different. So I think as much as we can teach those frontline people to promote the city as a whole and not just parts of it, I think the better.
Do you have programs in Portland, like the Big Apple Greeter in New York, and then you can see the Bronx through the eyes of somebody who lives there? I did one with a Black person to Queens, North Queens.
Oh, wow.
That's awesome.
That would be
Yeah, that's
amazing.
awesome. That's what you want to see, right?
Yeah, that would be amazing. What we have right now are these information people that are funded by the Portland Business Alliance, which is just downtown businesses. And I have had a lot of interaction with them this summer because I've been doing walking tours like in their areas. And I haven't seen a lot of anything from them. You know, they stand around their info booths, but they're not working at, you know, really doing any kind of interpretation or, you know, creating storytelling. So like something that wasn't just trying to promote those downtown businesses who seem to have a pretty like anti-Portland perspective in some cases. Like I have seen that from, you know, like just some of their public statements that they've made. You know, like it would be great to have somebody who really represented the city as a whole and not just those downtown business interests.
They need more coffee.
Probably. I should bring them some food cart food from the east side.
No, this is great. Environmental education, also great idea. EJ, can you very shortly elaborate a little bit on
I just
that?
put in like, I know that one of the Beaverton Nature Centers does Newt Fest or Newt Day. I should know what it is. Newt Day, and it's just a day about like celebrating rainy, wet weather. And you know, they have a lot of locals come, but it would be a really cool thing if somebody was traveling from a tropical place to see a temperate rainforest in action.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And by the way, perceptions on the planet towards rain are changing. So 20 years ago, everyone's in Belgium. This is like London, right? We have the drizzle. Everybody's complaining about the weather, and now, oh, it's raining. It's great. It's good for nature. It's strange. Okay, I still have a few minutes. One last idea. Yeah, Billy.
Yeah, I was just going to put in the chat, but we have talked about that as well, what you just said. I think rain tourism is going to be something. And, you know, I had a conversation with somebody from the Middle East
I love it.
4 or 5 years ago, and they want to see rain and they want to see snow. Of course, they want to travel in the summer. So we don't want to promote the summer. Plus, we don't have any rain in the summer. But I think rain tourism is coming, no doubt about it. And I think that's got something.
Oh yeah, you're right. I have a friend in Oman, Ahmed, and when he comes over and it's raining, he goes in the garden and he wants to feel it because it's so rare over there. Yeah, absolutely. No, good points. I need a volunteer to recap what we have been talking about. Of course, you will see the board and I will help there. But we need to do it short. We're really under the gun of timing, unfortunately. I would love to have workshops of 4 or 5 hours. Who wants to do that? Anybody who volunteers, or do I have to volunteer? Razia or EJ?
It should really be Razier should do it.
Okay,
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
I'm happy to do it. So Frank, you said, well, I'll be able to see this board.
Yeah, you will be able to see everything and we will help you. It's It's no examination. It's gonna be fine. But I'm very thankful for the ideas. I feel like if we talk another hour, I will have double so much ideas. But this is good for our information. And yes, I see a lot of difference between the workshops I've been in already. There are big differences in Oregon. I start understanding you, Kevin. It's logic, right? Okay, let's go back to, so you can leave room, press leave room, and then you have a minute in the breakout, the main room.
I thought more time. It's always the case.
That ended quickly.
I have to be the time person. It's never a fun role, that's for sure, especially cutting off so much good conversation. All right, we're just coming into the end of our co-creation lab, so thanks for sticking with us. and love to hear a little bit about the discussion in each of your rooms. I believe my team would have selected or voluntold somebody from the group to do a quick highlights of your Jamboard. So no need to like read the full thing. We'll do all of that after the call, but I'd love to hear anything that really stuck out from your conversation. So Amy, I'll start with you.
Thanks, Shannon. I didn't have time to call in a volunteer. I'm wondering, not this Shannon I'm talking to from Destination Think, but other Shannon that was in my group. Would you be willing to speak on our graph?
Sure. I'm assuming you're gonna pull.
I'm pulling it up right now, and I'm going to make this big, and I can jump in anywhere you need, but I know you shared lots of great insights, so I thought that might be helpful.
Okay, I'm just pinching it to make it larger so I can.
Perfect.
Oh, I think I just made it too large. Sorry.
Making it larger on my end too, so that might be the thing as well.
Well, I think we as a group did decide the highest priority is cleanup programs and social programs, and that if we are not creating a clean and safe and supportive of diverse peoples in our city prior to inviting people back in large part, we will be doing a disservice to all stakeholders, really, the people coming, the people living here. And, you know, I know that we have made this a priority for our community, at least in Portland, right? And I'm speaking a little bit more to Portland, that we're investing in it. So the money is there, the support is there. And so that would be the highest priority. We've also discussed how we need to do collaboration and community engagement so that we're bringing locals along to understand the values important collectively to supporting the travel industry and not overloving our resources and overloving any one specific thing, but that we can be broadly inviting and engaging. We also want to make certain that we're promoting within the state, but acknowledge that we also have opportunities to promote outside of the state to invite people and welcome people that are supportive of the things that we value. We believe that we need to promote our small business owners and makers as one of our defining differentiation between other markets. I think that there are other cities that do similar things to us just as well or better, right? But we all discussed that our maker community is unique. Our artistic community is unique. And that is part of the Keep Portland Weird, but not exclusively Keep Portland Weird. So let's see. Less important is we don't have a big attraction such as the Space Needle in Seattle that can be our one thing that we put our hat on. So we always need to be diversifying and supporting ways to bring people to understand our arts and culture and events. I know that at least Travel Portland, and I believe Oregon also does investments in events and supporting of grants to bring events and people into our community. I know that we recently at the Travel Portland got to see the great, huge investment that's going to be going into the Portland Art Museum. And while that's not an immediate attraction that we can share, it is a future attraction that I think will make us singularly one of the best art cities in the country, if not the world. So if I didn't capture everything, feel free to fill in the gaps that I missed.
Thank you so much, Shannon. That was a great top level highlight, and it was touching on the things that were most important.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great ideas. Frank, how about your team?
Thank you. Razia was so kind to volunteer in my group. So Razia, start with your own idea. Remember the...
Yeah, so my name is Razier, and our group was fantastic. We really talked about kind of the whole gamut, not only Portland Metro, but especially the outskirt areas and the assets to them. You know, I think we've all in some ways talked about arts and culture as a pretty driving attraction force. And so one of the things that I shared was that when we look at the product of arts and culture, that if our creatives and our product makers, our small business owners, aren't supported where they need, so housing security, right, business investments, grant dollars, then we don't, as tourism leaders, don't have the product we need to then promote and bring those outside dollars in. So some of those examples included using our strength and our ability to communicate data to advocate for housing opportunities, to advocate for policy change, to advocate for any specific grants that really change the way that those monies are not only funneled to businesses, but funneled to nonprofit businesses and arts businesses and gig workers who, create all these really beautiful aspects to our region. And then ultimately, when it comes to arts and culture, they need the foundation, and then really the promotion of the arts and culture is in many ways already built in. And then there's also allies with Tualatin Valley Creates and Regional Arts and Culture Council and some of our downtown businesses who automatically promote that as an asset to bringing people here. We talked a lot about kind of the social aspects of tourism and looking at maker spaces, and that those become really beautiful gathering spaces, and that leading with the arts then leads into other small businesses in the hospitality, and the arts can help be buoyant for our small businesses and the uniqueness of our small businesses when looking at, made in Oregon. We talked about elements regarding training our frontline staff, right? So these are the people that might be in the minimum wage bracket who are the first ones to answer the phone and have to be the first ones to say, no, there isn't going to be a protest this weekend. No, you can't expect a mugging on the max, things like that. So making sure that our frontline workers have the tools that they need to defend the tourism industry. We talked about those elements again of changing the negative perception of Portland regarding like houselessness, and also regarding Portland has a really long history of being a protest central and being a political central. And so looking at, okay, how do we flip that from being like, is that a negative thing, to being something that's really exciting about our region, that we have a lot of very engaged residents and that this is a great space to come and have deep dialogue. We talked about identifying some of our neighborhoods. So it's one thing once we get people here, but then how do we create special promotion to Northeast Portland, Southeast Portland, the West Side quadrants, the outside of the Portland Metro zip codes, to our winery districts, to our downtown districts like Hillsborough and Beaverton, because each of those are their own special pockets and their own identities. We especially talked about when tourists go to some of those districts, like if they want to go to the winery districts in some of the neighboring counties, then where do they stay? And so there's a lack of some lodging products in some of these other very pinnacle districts to our tourism industry. And that kind of led us into, okay, the Airbnb, right? Many of our houses are now turned into short-term rentals, Airbnb, but ultimately saying that we also don't have like hotels in some of these districts that really drive a lot of our tourism. So coming back again to our tourism organizations and entities, what can we do with our strength for the work that we do to advocate for balancing Airbnb, residential, housing security, maybe attracting new boutique hotels, smaller, very like specialized hotel opportunities. We also talked very briefly about, we've got summer tourism and what happens in the winter. What are some of the assets to our Portland metro area for winter tourism? And that one thing that was brought up is that, right, the museum is open all year long, but the museum isn't always the thing that everybody wants to take part in. And that one of the people in our team had done a survey and had said that maybe only about 5% of people want to visit the museum at all when they come to Portland. So what are other things that we can encourage for rain tourism? And we talked about how international travelers do come to Portland because of our temperate rainforest, and that we already have local agencies that are doing rain training and things that are special about our ecosystems here. So how do we then help promote and bring that to the travelers' mindset and in that catalog that says, yes, come between November and March because there's still lots to do inside. So those are kind of the whole gamut of our discussion. Any questions or anybody from our team that wants to add to that?
Oh, amazing job. Wow, thank you. I'm impressed. I love that rain tourism winter product was so much in this group. Yes, Shannon.
Thanks, Frank. Rebecca.
Great. Thank you so much. That was excellent. And I think we will just add to that excellence. Samara has been, well, she graciously agreed to talk on our group's behalf. So I'm going to try and make this a bit bigger.
Rebecca, and I'll consider it kickoff. And if anyone in my group wants to chime in, please do. I think the most important thing for us to share with the room is that the downtown revitalization, the cleanups, we can't accept anything less than it being high urgency and high feasibility, that we can't say that it's low feasibility. We just got to make it happen, was really very strongly expressed in our room. I think another component of our conversation that adds to what's already been shared is a real call out for calling in the Indigenous voices into these conversations, especially around this idea of place and what it means to be in place. And so kudos for doing it, do more to make that happen. There was, from a product development side of things, there was a real discussion about how electric vehicles in fleets, rental fleets, charging stations, car shares could really add in terms of product experience. We also really we talked a lot about bringing locals along by showing up in the spaces where locals care. Us stepping into our community perhaps in a different way than we have before. And our room had a lot of folks that work for destination organizations, and we got called out for being kind of insular and having our own language. So how we speak to residents and share what we're doing is really important. And then this idea that Oregon is ready, and how we need to make sure our international markets know that we are still a vibrant international destination. That'll be critical to recovery. And then there was a lot of discussion about what role we play in workforce recruitment and retention in the industry, and telling the story of what it is to work specifically in Oregon and to work within the hospitality sector. So those are, we touched on some things that were also mentioned around our resident and operators, the businesses, and the support that they need, that I think has been touched on in some of the other conversations. So I think I'll leave those as our highlights. If anybody wants to add, please jump in.
No, that's great, Samara. And just to point out for Tanya that the car share program, we had that as higher feasibility. That was my thought, but she mentioned that it had been tried and had failed. So we have moved that over.
Great. Great ideas. Thank you, Rebecca's team, and Samara for sharing. Lastly, William.
All right. I was just about to ask Wendy if she wanted to do the honors. Wendy, I'm putting you on the spot. Are you okay with that?
Wendy's still, oh,
I can't speak because I can't unmute myself. So sorry about that. Yeah, I'd like to say, please, anybody jump in at any time. We talked about a real variety of factors in this, and one of the places we went was coordination with local governments, recognizing that for the economic impact support that we need and feel that we really is essential to moving forward, that we need to align ourselves more with our government officials. We looked at wildfires as an example of that, and the way that it impacted our industry. We also talked about it in that left top quadrant in terms of workforce, and how gaining, stronger relationships with government and the programs that they offer would help us. We talked a lot about supporting underrepresented communities and how to build relationships overall. There was a particular discussion in development of riverfront assets and promotion of riverfront assets, and how that could really be a way to open up some of our tourism marketing and communication by looking at something that has high accessibility. We talked about the importance of arts, as I heard in many conversations, but also the tie-in with making people feel safe and welcome in a community. So there was a point about, even murals, how they make people feel welcome. And so kind of low-hanging fruit there. Can you move over the worksheet just a little bit so I can, or let me just.
This way?
Yeah, there we go. Thank you. We also talked about an opportunity in terms of marketing for multi-day regional itinerary volunteering. We talked about, particularly as it goes to the water, such cool things that energy kayaking is doing in Oregon City, and the great success that the marina is enjoying in Scappoose, and of course, all the activities that are available on the Willamette, that would be a way to tie the diverse region together to particularly appeal to those who enjoy the water. I think overall there were comments about improved communication and how complicated that is, particularly in our region, because it does represent so many different assets and so many different organizations. But that's a continuing desire and need. What did I miss, team?
I think you were pretty comprehensive. So thanks for that. I'll hand it back to Shannon.
Thanks, Wendy and Williams team. So many good ideas. Our team is going to have a lot of fun going through all of this with all the other regions. So thank you again for your participation. I just wanted to quickly touch base on what's next, just to make sure that you're all in the loop of where we go from here. So Frank went through sort of the process at the beginning, but essentially we are in this sort of middle stage here with the industry engagement of where we could be and how do we get there. And again, just a reminder from a timing perspective, all of these insights and everything we've learned on this journey of Travel Oregon will be distilled down into a strategic framework and also validated through the racial equity lens, as it's very crucial to ensure everything we do with this strategy is rooted in a racial equity impact assessment. So once that framework is aligned, we then develop the full transformational strategy and organizational design for Travel Oregon, which will be presented in sort of early 2022. And then we do have one sort of final phase, which is pretty important. It's implementation. So Destination Think will be working closely with Travel Oregon about how do we effectively move this transformational strategy forward. What are the key priorities and actions to start us off, and how they can effectively adopt this with yourselves and the industry to drive that change forward. So those are sort of the next steps that we'll be working over on the next few months. And again, I want to thank all of you for your time today. It has been super valuable for us. It's been a really great conversation, and we're really excited to kind of take all of this as we move ahead with this transformational strategy. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll be in touch soon. And thanks again for joining us. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Guys. Bye, everyone.
Thank you all.
Goodbye, everyone.
Have a great weekend all.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.